Hello and welcome to episode 36 of Take Your Points. I'm your host Ronan Scott. This week we are looking ahead to the Ulster Championship. We didn't think it was going to happen, but it's here for better or for worse. For this show, I've invited two of our columnists on, Cahal, Carvill and Gerard, to just talk about the upcoming games that happen this weekend and the following weekend after that. So here we are. We've got the championship. Thanks for coming in, lads, and thanks for joining us. The first question I wanted to ask is, should the Ulster Championship be happening at all? What do you think, Gerard?
Firstly, I would probably say I'm in favour of the championship going ahead. I know that some people maybe think that the GAA is showing a bit of elitism here and why are they treated differently to other parts of society, but I think the GAA is the one sporting body within Ireland that probably unites more people. I would imagine it's the biggest organisation within Ireland, and it's maybe holds more influence than maybe even the Catholic Church that would have done maybe 40 or 50 years ago. And I think given the fact that most studies would show you that the transmission of any virus is roughly around 19 times less likely to occur in an outdoor setting, I think once we realised that the issues surrounding GAA was not exactly the matches themselves, it was more so what was happening after games, i.e. in certain areas and county finals. Up until that, there wasn't an issue running round robin club championships, quarter finals, semi-finals. I think the Cahal camp ran to the tune of maybe 70,000 children over the summer, and the only reported case was one which was traced back to a Holy Communion party. So I think, taking all that into consideration, I think the players themselves are keenly aware of the spotlight that will be on them. And for instance, if Derry play Armagh this week, if there's going to be a winner and a loser, I just don't think we would see the sorts of scenes you might see after a county final within any county.
Okay, Cahal, what's your thoughts? Should the Ulster Championship be happening?
Thanks, Ronan. I suppose first and foremost it's great to be talking about something other than the pandemic. To have the blood and thunder of the Ulster Championship back, albeit at Halloween, I'm really looking forward to it. It's something to look forward to. It's something that a lot of people are talking about. Yes, there are the concerns about whether it should go ahead or not, but any of the inter-county players involved or management that I've been speaking to, they have gone above and beyond to ensure that it's as safe as possible. But I definitely do think it should be going ahead. I had my concerns going back to the start of the pandemic in March time in relation to the GAA season as a whole. But now, though cases are rising again, I really do think that having the Ulster Championship back is a good thing for the people in this part of the world. And certainly I'm looking forward to it. There's some really, really great games, and it's promises to be in a wet and windy Halloween weekend. Will it be trick or treat? Who knows? But certainly I'm looking forward to it.
Okay, so the championship's going ahead. We're going to have to preview it no matter what happens, and it does promise it to be very exciting with it being straight knockout this year. But first off, the two heavy hitters are Donegal Tyrone. They're playing this weekend. So, Cahal, what do you think the big talking point is from this game?
Tyrone and Donegal. This is it's definitely the tie of the weekend across all of the championships. It's heavy hitters, absolutely. Forget about USIG's Chisora on Saturday night. It's all about Tyrone and Donegal, and certainly I couldn't be more excited for the game. The big talking points, I suppose, you can't go anywhere. You can't talk about Tyrone GAA at the minute without mentioning the man of the moment, Conor McKenna. He's lit up the league in the couple of games that he's played so far, and having that pedigree. And I remember him back in the McCrory days 7 or 8 years ago playing for St Pat's Armagh, and he was a different animal even then. So after 6 years of Aussie rules under his belt and the strength and conditioning that he's partaking in there, to come back and just to see him absolutely light up the game against Mayo last weekend, I predict he's going to do the same again this weekend. Obviously, Eamon McGee will be raring to go, and he'll accept the challenge full on. So it's going to be in that Donegal defence with McKenna, with Brennan, with Donnelly and with Hart, Roman. It's going to be a war of attrition there. No quarter asked, no quarter given. And at the other end with Donegal, Jamie Brennan has been back with a bang, I think, in the league. He scored the goal. Him and Peter Morgan looked very impressive against Tyrone earlier on in the league up in Ballybuffet. Michael Murphy, the ever reliable, mercurial Michael Murphy, probably the greatest footballer to ever come out of Donegal, maybe out of Ulster, and I think he'd go down as one of the greatest footballers ever to play the game. He will have a massive impact undoubtedly this weekend, and whether I think he will be played closer to the goal, and him and Jamie Brennan in a full forward line is absolutely scintillating. So the Tyrone defence, I think, has creaked, especially last weekend against Mayo when they were pretty much out of sight, and Mayo, and let's be honest, average enough and ageing Mayo team, who I don't think will be anywhere near the All Ireland this year, pegged them to within a point at the end. So it's going to be fascinating matchups all across the field.
Okay, Gerard, what's your thoughts on this game?
I suppose looking at the key battles within this, you probably have to say both goalkeepers are hugely influential for their own team. In terms of their kickouts, I would imagine if you're looking at the top 3 or 4 keepers in the country, both Patton and Morgan will be in that bracket. I think Morgan maybe has more of an edge in what he can bring to the team out the field in terms of when he comes out, supports the play, but I think he has to do that because I'm not sure that Tyrone are just as well balanced as Donegal, but both goalkeepers will have a massive say in this in terms of where they place their kickouts, and their free taking as well. And I think Patton maybe has an advantage in that he just has more options on his kickout. Donegal can line the midfield with 3 or 4 players 6'2", 6'3" above, and I suppose it gives Patton 5 different options as opposed to Niall Morgan just doesn't have that range of options with Tyrone. Obviously, all the key battles will involve key players such as what did Tyrone do with Michael Murphy. Over the years, they always had a bit of a plan for him, but it looks like they're going to be without Patrick Hampsey. Do they risk bringing Ronan McNamee from the edge of the square to follow Murphy? Physically, it'd be well able for him, but then I think that leaves Tyrone bare and around the square. While Tyrone are lauded for their attacking half-backs, attacking cornerbacks, if you look at the last day, while Liam Rafferty scored maybe not one set-up a point, Darragh O'Connor scored 1-2 or 1-3. And I think first and foremost you have to look at defence. And if I'm a defender, I always enjoy getting up for a score, but not at the expense of my man scoring 1-3. And I'm not sure that Tyrone have that range of options to be covering Donegal's danger men, because they'll be trying to maybe stop the likes of Ryan McHugh, who kicked not 3 against him the last day, got man of the match. I watched him play for his club during the club championship and he was doing similar things. He's just so hard to track. Well, Conor Meyler maybe had the legs for him, but then again you're using Conor Meyler then as a forward, and when he brings all that physical attributes to the game and he wins the ball, Tyrone will be wanting their forwards to get on the scoreboard. So I think just Donegal have a better balanced team and they have more options around the field. And no, that's not to say that if Tyrone maybe play the way they did against Mayo, that instead of reverting back into a defensive system, maybe going at Donegal and putting more pressure on Donegal high up the field and pressure on Patton's kicks, Tyrone might get some joy out of that, and it's maybe something that Donegal maybe won't be expecting. But overall, if you're asking me here now, 5 days out, I would have to say Donegal to edge it by 3 points.
And alright, will you call it for me though, Cahal? How would you call it?
For me, it's Donegal by a couple of points. Could go into injury time, but hopefully not penalties. But I think Donegal will just have too much in the too much firepower, too much, I suppose, bulk, and they'll take the victory. And I think they have a good chance of going all the way and going to the All Ireland.
Okay, moving on. Next game is Derry Armagh. You must have some good insights into this one. Cahal, what sort of game are you expecting here?
I think this is an intriguing one. I think it's going to be maybe possibly the low key game of the weekend in terms of how it will be played. I don't expect it to be high scoring. I expect it to be attritional. Again, the weather for Sunday at 4 o'clock in Derry isn't great. And Armagh, I suppose they've been hitting the headlines over the past 7 days, getting promoted to Division 1, and obviously Derry have had their issues in the league over the past number of years, so they'll be coming in under the radar, and I certainly think this is a case of snake in the long grass with Derry. There hasn't been that much talk about them. Chris McKaig's been in the papers today saying that they always fancy their chances against Armagh. If you look at the last 5 fixtures, Derry have had 2 wins. Armagh have got over the line just about in 3 of the other games. They've always been very tight and closely contested. I think in Celtic Park, I don't think it'll be a massive advantage to Derry. Big open field will suit the likes of Jamie Clark and Ray O'Neill to get up and down the park, but I think Derry won't fear Armagh, absolutely not. They'll look at what Roscommon did to them. Armagh were firing on all cylinders in the first half, looked like world beaters, and in the second half they capitulated in defence. They look to target, I think, Brendan Donaghy, and if he is in the half back line, and put a runner on him. In terms of where Derry are, they'll certainly look to target the Armagh's man at the moment, Stephen Campbell, who's brought his form from the club championship into the inter-county. So it's going to be a really interesting game. I think it's going to be a case of a slight bit of complacency will set in with Armagh, and they'll maybe be patting themselves on the back a little too much, and it could be that Derry catch them in the long grass, and I think there's going to be 1 or 2 points either way in the game. It's going to be very tight, and if anyone thinks that Armagh is going to blow them out of the water based on league form, this is championship. This is a whole different ball game. I think it'll be very, very close, 1 point either way, and if Armagh haven't got their heads right for this one, there could be a shock on the cards.
Gerard, what do you think?
Moving on to the big one, we're looking at Derry v Armagh. I would think that maybe Cahal would maybe tell you Armagh are maybe more a hurling county in his eyes, but I have to say I'm really looking forward to this clash. On paper now, it's looked at a Division 1 against a Division 3 team as they now sit going into next year, but I don't think the gap is that big between the pair of them. If you looked at Armagh's game versus Roscommon, they seem to be wide open at the back. Now Roscommon have won 2 out of the last 3 Connachts, and I don't think they get the credit which they deserve, and they're a good side, but it was showing glimpses that Armagh are there to be taken. And then against Clare, the same thing. They maybe switched off for 10-15 minutes, let Clare back into it, and although they ran away with a 5-point victory, I think they made it difficult for themselves. Whereas I've watched Derry's last 2 games against Longford and Offaly, and in both games they're relatively comfortable, while they had 4 changes the second week from the first week. I think Rory Gallagher's maybe using that to try out a squad to see who's available. I think what Rory Gallagher brings to the table, and he's shown it with both Fermanagh and Donegal, he's big into matchups. Now I know very little about the squad getting into it or the way they play, but I think he will look at their Armagh team and Rory will gamble and get his matchups right, and more often than not he does. And I think that will be a key battle, and Derry won the game. Physically, I think Derry's well able for Armagh. Derry are probably underestimated in terms of the physical size they can bring to the game. I've seen them now the last couple of games, and they've really bulked up over the lockdown, and I think in Shane McGuigan they probably have one of the best footballers in Ulster at the minute. It's the closest thing Derry have had and will have to Paddy Bradley going forward for years, in terms of he's strong, he's a ball winner himself, he's going to score not 6, not 7 a game, he'll draw frees, and I think if Derry can try to isolate him and get him plenty of ball, I'm putting my money on Derry for this one.
And Cahal?
In terms of calling it, I don't want to be too controversial, but I think it'll be a very close run thing. I think a draw is a good shout, and we'll give it to Armagh to come through in extra time and maybe even penalties. But if anyone thinks that Armagh just have to turn up on Sunday, they've got another thing coming, because this Derry team will be coming, and they will be coming to take a big scalp on Sunday. Another one very much looking forward to, as with the Tyrone Donegal game, and it's a Halloween festival of football.
What about the Cavan and Monaghan game? It should be a feisty one. It's a classic Ulster derby. What's your take, Cal?
Calvin Monaghan, I think this is probably going to be maybe the most disappointing game of the weekend. I just really, having watched Calvin's last couple of league games, I just really can't see how they will be able to put it up to their neighbours Monaghan. I just think they're operating on a completely different basis at the minute. Calvin having coming back from the lockdown and coming back from this season, they've looked sort of possibly lost. Dropping out of Division 2 has been a big blow for them, and I think it's going to be really difficult to get them up for this game and to get them playing at a level which can really test Monaghan. The Monaghan side with Bonty back in the cockpit, I think they're going to be certainly a handful this year, and he'll have them well drilled, and I think they have operated at a higher level than Cavan for a while, and I think they're a team that has come back from the break in a lot better shape mentally and physically than Cavan, and I think there's only going to be one winner in this one, Ronan, and that's our neighbours Monaghan.
Gerard, what's your take on the Cavan Monaghan game?
Local derby down there, but maybe the absence of the crowd will take away the feistiness of it. In terms of how the game will go, I think last weekend it just maybe showed where both teams are maybe at, in that Monaghan have been able to do enough over the course of the last 2 weeks, where they pushed Kerry to 4 points, and they were just had enough power and scoring threat to go over the line against Meath, whereas Cavan have lost their last 3 games in Division 2, which resulted in an unlikely relegation for them, so they're now in Division 3. I think Mickey Graham will maybe point to the fact that they have had a large turnover of players in comparison to other counties, and I suppose it didn't help them get a settled team, whereas Monaghan have had by and large the same squad for the last 6, 7, 8 years. Obviously Banty has brought a wee bit of freshness to it himself. He's added 1 or 2 players, but there's been nothing major in terms of the spine of their team or the core players they rely on. And I think you've seen enough last week in that where McManus is still scoring 1-8 against Meath. There's no doubt Meath would have went out and flagged McManus as the danger man, but it's not always that easy. Now, I know Cavan have given Monaghan a tight run for it. This last 2 or 3 times they've played. They beat them in the semi-final 2 seasons ago. But I think looking at it with the preparation both teams have had, it's the only form line we can go on. I think going against the better judgment of my in-laws from Cavan, I think I'm going to have to put Monaghan for this one by 4.
Okay, that's our 3 games for this weekend previewed. The following weekend, Down are playing Fermanagh and Antrim are playing winners of Cavan and Monaghan. How do you see those games going, Gerard?
Fermanagh will be at home for this one, which will be a big help. But I think, again, just like the Cavan Monaghan preview, I think given the form line of where the 2 teams are at the minute and where they sit in the pecking order, I think we'll have seen Fermanagh go down to Division 3 and Down have won promotion up to Division 2, and again we only have 1 game for Down to go on. They get beat by Louth, but from what I gathered it was quite an experimental side. Fermanagh have had a tough time since the resumption of the league. It was well documented the ball they had against Clare with the players missing, and then again during Laois game at the weekend, while they're maybe down a few, they looked to be playing well enough, but in the last 5 minutes they conceded 3 goals, which is very un-Fermanagh-like. I'm not sure whether they were trying something different or they were trying to push up a bit more, but Laois end up scoring 3 points with the one, but they had 3-9 without it. And I think that sort of scoring 3-12 down, have that sort of power up front to do damage to the scoreboard against Fermanagh. I don't see it being a highly scoring game. I think Fermanagh will try and keep it to a minimum, but I just see Down having too much scoring power to get over the line against them.
And what about yourself, Cahal?
The Fermanagh Down clash, I think these are two evenly matched teams. Fermanagh have had a very difficult time of it over the past couple of weeks, with obviously the carry on with having to go down to play Clare with only half a team, and they actually probably should have won that game against Laois. The goals at the end of the game, I think, flattered Laois, and that's another game that Fermanagh should have won. With Down, have maybe flattered to deceive again since the break, and my tip for the following week is that Fermanagh to pull off a shock against Down.
The last game next week is going to be Antrim versus Monaghan or Cavan. Obviously, we don't know who they'll play yet. I had predicted Monaghan earlier, but even looking at Antrim in isolation, they have had a tough time since they came back from COVID. They went down to Wicklow and conceded 7 goals in a game which probably cost them their promotion. Antrim had a bit of momentum before the break in the league, but again, since the break in the league come, I don't think it's done them much favours in that regard. They got a victory last week against Waterford, which I think maybe certainly there would have been 8 Ulster counties backing them in that regard, but I think most counties would have been supporting Antrim. And I think given the circumstances and how the game was played and all the furore surrounding it in terms of where it was at and getting it fixed for Drogheda, I think it was maybe easy for Antrim to get themselves up for the game. And I'm not sure that they will have the same motivation against either a Cavan or a Monaghan team that might come through. I know that Lenny Harbison has called on a few more experienced players to try and come in instead of the ship. Again, it's only a short season, and in that regard, it's a one-off game for Antrim. I would imagine they'll give it a decent rattle and a good account of themselves, but given the fact that either side which come through will have had a game to prepare, I just think they'll be too strong for Antrim.
Taking account of Monaghan, who I think will beat Calvin and will be facing Antrim, and I think that's a likely outcome from this weekend. And looking ahead to that clash with Antrim, there's been a whole lot of talk about them beating Waterford, whether it's in Louth or whether it's in a newly refurbished Casement Park, is never something to write home about, and I think they'll have a rude awakening and be brought back down to earth against Monaghan in the quarter-final. Thanks so much, Ronan. It's great to be back on. My tips for the weekend are Donegal to win a thriller, Armagh to just do enough against Derry, maybe in extra time, and Monaghan to have a big win against Cavan, and of course Joe Biden to take the presidency on Tuesday. Look forward to speaking to you soon. Thanks.
Okay, that's great. That's our Ulster Championship preview for this week. It's here, it started, we can't believe it, but it's actually happening, and it promises to be very exciting. So hopefully we'll see you back in 2 weeks' time. We'll look ahead to the semi-finals and the final. But thanks for watching. If you want to see more of these shows, we've did them right throughout this year. When there was games and when there weren't games, you can get them all online at NVTV or at the Gaelic Life website. And I encourage you to subscribe to the Gaelic Life website. You can do that online, gaeliclife.com, and there's plenty of new content, exciting, interesting content, and I encourage you to do that. So thanks for watching, and thanks. See you next time.